From the 1st of March 2024, students were not allowed to get their dependents along with them in order to stop the abuse of the student visa in the UK, where students would get their dependents and the numbers of that had crossed massive thresholds across the UK. Now, obviously, that was for students, but what has been happening to the PSW? If any of you all are having questions or doubts about it, do not stress because today's video is going to be answering all of the questions about the graduate scheme or the PSW. So if you are interested in it, please do not forget to watch this video all the way to the end. But my name is Nikita and I make videos about living in the UK, completing your HCPC registration, finding jobs and working as a healthcare professional in the UK. And if any of these are of interest to you, do not forget to drop me a subscribe, but also follow me on Instagram. My handle is Physiotherapy in UK. So firstly, let's quickly chat through about what this video is going to cover. So you remember that the UK government asked the MAC, which is the Migratory Advisory Committee, to review the PSW or the post-study work visa as most of you know it. Now the intention of this was to check if the UK's PSW was being used effectively by students. So before we dive any further, let's just understand what this video is going to cover for you guys. So first, we're going to talk about what is the PSW. The PSW essentially stands for the post-study work visa. And this was something that was used by many students across the UK because it gave them the opportunity to work in the UK for 2 years, especially if you completed your master programs. But also, if you completed your PhD programs, it would allow you to stay in the UK for 3 years. So what really has gone wrong then? So recently, when the Home Office or when the UK government asked the MAC, which is the Migration Advisory Committee, to have a look at all of the visas, it suggested several changes along to the UK visa processes. But the most important one, and the one we're going to discuss in today's video, is why has the PSW been called in light? So like I've said before, the PSW is being used by graduates to stay back in the UK to find work. But the UK Home Office is now concerned about the rising number of applicants who are using this visa to stay back in the UK, and whether the general processes of this visa aligns with the UK's best interest. However, it will be the MPs, that is the members of parliament, to decide on whether this report is going to be accepted or rejected. So it might take a bit longer than that. However, be assured that the report will be issued by the 14th of May. So again, quick recap in terms of what is the eligibility requirements for the PSW. So like I've said before, the PSW allows you to find work and live in the UK legally for up to 2 years following your master's program and for up to 3 years following your PhD program. But this is provided you've completed your university degree and successfully passed it. Other than that, there are several other eligibility requirements. So like I've said, the biggest eligibility criteria is that you need to pass your degree successfully. So if you have failed even one module or one subject, you will not be granted the PSW until you have cleared it. The second criteria is that you need to be physically present in the UK. Now, for example, a lot of us might tend to go back to India or Pakistan once we've completed our degrees and would think about making the PSW application from there. And let me inform you that you need to stop right there and think about it, because you will not be allowed to make this application from anywhere else except the UK. So once you've completed your degree, stay back and make those applications before running home for a vacation. The third criteria is not so much of a criteria, but just a little bit of information for you, is if your dependent joined you on your student visa before the 1st of January 2024, then you would have been allowed to get them along with you and they can stay with you on your PSW. However, if you've made an application for a student visa after the 1st of Jan 2024, you will not be allowed to get any more dependents with you, and that rule also stands true for your PSW. And the last criteria is that you should have been on a student visa before transitioning to the PSW. So say for example, you were offered a job as soon as you completed your degree and you switched over to the health and care worker visa. Now following that time, you stayed on that visa for say a few months and then you would have been asked to leave the company, that is you were fired. Now this is again something that might happen to you, and so do not be flustered about it. But if this does happen to you, please remember that you cannot go back to your PSW visa just because you do not have a work visa anymore. You ideally should have just transitioned from your student visa onto your PSW. So for example, with this person's case, they went from student visa to health and care worker visa, which is your work visa, and so they cannot go back to PSW. I hope that made sense, but if it didn't, let me know in the comments below and I will try to clear those doubts. So now that we know about the requirements, let's talk about the cost. So firstly, you need to remember that you're going to have to make two important payments. The first is obviously your visa application fee, which at the minute stands for £822. The second major expense for you is going to be the immigration health surcharge. Now remember, this has recently gone up and currently it stands at £1,035 for each year. So that brings up your total cost to about $2,892 for the overall 2 years. So what about the recent updates related to the PSW? So James Cleverly, who is the Home Secretary, recently ordered the MAC, that is on March 11th, to have a rapid review of the PSW. In a letter dated 11th of March, the Home Secretary was actually concerned about whether students joining into the universities on this particular visa could ruin the reputation of UK universities, but also if the students are actually abusing this visa route and this visa exploitation is going undetected or untracked. And what Mr. Cleverly is really concerned about is that he says that while the graduate route has helped to attract bright international students into the UK and work in our economy post-study, he wants to ensure that it is not being abused. So what he is essentially worried about is that students are choosing to come to the UK not to study, but because they would like to settle down and live here, and they use the PSW as a means to do that. Now, he is completely fair to be concerned about this because recent reports have showed that the number of people applying to low-grade universities, that is universities that have the lowest entry requirements, has increased from nearly 250% as compared to the previous years. The intention of suggesting this review is also that the Home Secretary is actually concerned about why people are using this particular visa category. One reason could obviously be that they are using this visa category as a method to stay in the UK long term, because from this visa category, they found that most of the people will transition to the work visa and then go on to settle down in the UK. However, if there are other reasons, he is definitely keen on looking out for them. Now, the Home Secretary has asked the MAC, which is the Migration Advisory Committee, to look at these 5 main factors while conducting its review of the PSW. The first is that if there is any abuse for students or people using this route in order to settle down in the UK. The second thing he's really concerned about and would like a little bit more clarity from is who is using this route and from what universities are they graduating. The third factor he wants to get a little bit of insight on is the demographics and the geographical locations from these students who are accessing the student visa and later on going to use the PSW to stay in the UK labour markets. Now, for those of you all who weren't aware, obviously when the PSW was initially started, they found that Nigerians and Indians made the most number of student visa applications to be in the UK. The next thing he's definitely keen to find out a bit more information about is what are students doing during their time on the post-study work visa and before it or after it. So he really wants to find out if the students who are on the PSW and go on to secure jobs are actually positively contributing to UK's economy. And the fifth factor he's considering to get a bit more information about is whether the PSW is actually undermining or reducing the quality of the education system within the UK. Now again, the reason for this is not that it's actually targeting the universities or the students, it's actually finding out more information because like I've said before, the reports have already established that many students are applying to colleges that have very low entry requirements but also have low tariff fees for international students. Now there's nothing wrong in doing this, let me get this right. So there isn't anything wrong in doing this. However, he wants to find out more information about whether these particular students end up contributing positively to UK. Now, before I shut off this video, I just want to give you a few words of personal advice. Personally, I think, and many of the UK universities here believe, that the PSW is a very important route for the UK government in order to attract many international students who are obviously bright and clever and smart. But also they have a very unique way of supporting the UK's economy, not only by paying for the university fees, but also thinking about the immigration health surcharges and the PSW or the visa fees that go into making these applications. So that is one of the major positives, that it's not only some of the universities, but many of them who are backing this idea and are placing this forward in front of the different UK political parties. So my personal piece of advice to all of you out there is please do not panic. The report will be issued on the 14th of May 2024, which is just a week from now. So please hold your horses and wait a little bit more. But the thing is that you need to remember that if you are already in a course in the UK, the current rules will stand for you. So you will be eligible to apply for your PSW once your course is completed. But this only holds true if you've gone through and met all of the eligibility requirements. So my recommendation to you is please do not stress and be worried about this, but please see that you're fulfilling all of the eligibility requirements that give you the tick or the check for you to apply for your PSW in this year, and go ahead and make those applications. I hope you found this video useful, guys, but I would be really keen in knowing your thoughts about it in the comments below. So do get back to me. Take care.